going to look at function graphs and their characteristics. What I want you to do is, number one, graph that parabola on the graph paper, pause the video, use your calculator, and then once you are all set, hit play. So your graph should look something like this. Then we're going to find the different features. So the first one is the domain. That's all of your x values that are possible. And if you look at the graph, no matter what x value I plug in, I will always get a y value. So that means that my domain is negative infinity to infinity. I can have any x value I want will give me a y. Your range is your y values, and this one's a little trickier because this does stop down here at the minimum value. However, I can't get that minimum value out of the table because it's a decimal. So what I'm going to do is take my calculator. First I'm going to change the window. So I'm going to hit menu and then choice 4 and zoom out so I can see that minimum. Once I do that, I'm going to hit menu, choice 6, analyze the graph and minimum, and then remember your minimum just needs to be in that gray box, and hit enter. So you get the coordinates, and we're looking at the range, which is the y value I want here, negative 7.5. So going back to my graph, the lowest that the range goes is negative 7.5, and it's a square bracket or a hard bracket because that point is included. And then it goes on and on up forever and ever towards infinity. Now for your x-intercepts, you're also going to hit menu on your graph, and this time you're going to hit choice 1 because remember, another word for our x-intercepts is our zeros, where it crosses the x-axis. So go ahead and pause the video and use your calculator to find those x-intercepts. Hit play once you're. Now that I have my x-intercepts, I'm going to look at my y-intercept where it crosses the y-axis. I can see right here at 0, 5, or I can get that out of the table. Remember, the y-intercept has an x value of 0. The next part, over what interval of the domain, so that means I'm looking at the x values to get the interval, is the graph increasing and decreasing? So let's take a look at this graph. If I draw a line through my minimum called the axis of symmetry, it divides the graph into two sections, one section where it's increasing, the other where it's decreasing. So I'm going to start labeling from left to right. We read, as x is getting bigger, y is getting smaller. So this section of the graph is my decreasing section, and then on the other side of the axis of symmetry, as x is getting bigger, y is getting bigger. So that section is where it is increasing. Now I just need to know how to write my interval. Well, it's decreasing all the way until it gets to this point. And remember we said interval of the domain. So what's the domain value there? That's the x value that's at that point. That's 2.5. We just got that off our calculator from the minimum. So it's increasing from negative infinity all the way until it gets to that 2.5. And then once it hits that sorry, that's backwards. That's the decreasing section. Fix that. Decreasing from negative infinity to 2.5. It's increasing once I hit that 2.5, and that's increasing forever and ever up towards infinity. Then we also have intervals of the domain where y is greater than 0 and y is less than 0. Y greater than 0 is another way of saying above the x-axis. That's where the positive y's are. And y less than 0 is another way of saying below the x-axis. So I will usually draw a line through my x-axis and look at this. The other thing that you learned in Algebra 1 is that there's another way to say y greater than 0, and remember y can be represented by f of x if you have a function, so you may see f of x greater than 0, or for the other one you may see f of x less than 0. That's another way to ask you the same question. So looking at my graph, if I draw my line through my x-axis here, this is the section where y is greater than 0, this is the section where y is less than 0. The part that divides it is those x-intercepts that you found earlier on. So the top section above the y-axis, x-axis, is greater than 0. The bottom section down here is where it's less than 0. So now I just need to write that interval. So the first one has two pieces. I'm going to start here from negative infinity all the way till I get to this first x-intercept here at 0.564. So it's negative infinity to 0.564. And then remember we use the u because there's another piece, so that union. And the other piece starts at the second x-intercept and goes towards positive infinity. That other x-intercept was 4.44, comma, infinity. And then when it's below is between those two. Starting at that first x-intercept, 0.564, all the way to the second one, 4.44. Lastly, we have find the average rate of change over the interval -2, 2. Remember, this is another way to say slope, which is your change in y over change in x. So I need to know the y values that go with -2 and +2. The y value that goes with -2 is 33. The y value that goes with +2 is -7. So I have 33 minus -7 over -2 minus 2, which ends up giving me 40 divided by -4, or -10 for the slope there. Alright, that's the end of page 1.